It's amazing what you can do really quickly if we put our minds to it in Europe. Now, there is still plenty more to mull over and potentially annex to the 2015 Lund Declaration, but we are not quite done yet with some joined-up thinking about joint programming. Now, you may be aware that ahead of today, a European Commission expert group have been putting the PI into JPI, investigating how all aspects of joint programming has worked and where it hasn't. And this is where we get to hear and discuss their preliminary findings and conclusions. We've got a panel all lined up and ready to react. But first, some applause, please, as we give them something to react to. He is many things, but for the purposes of today, he is chair of the European Commission Expert Group Evaluation of Joint Programming, Professor Juan Tomás Hernani.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's for me a pleasure to provide to you an advance of information on the analysis that we are currently performing. Unfortunately, the cancellation of the Lund conference last week disabled us to confront with a number of stakeholders some of our conclusions. So it's going to be a little bit preliminary, but I think still you can have some hint on what is happening. Let me introduce our fantastic group. With Claire, Christine, Leonidas, Angus, and myself, chaired by Jörg Niehoff, who have performed this analysis. To start with, I would say that we have to check what is the health status of this type of alliance towards common destiny of societal challenges that we are faced with. And the first thing what we have done is to look at who is relevant in the structuring of the solution. So we have seen a number of stakeholders. I put with a big ball the countries, because we are convinced that everything comes from the countries and goes back to the countries, and we have to put a lot of attention into how is this stakeholder performing in the whole goal of JPIs. Of course, the JPIs, the 10 JPIs themselves, that we have included also 4 P2Ps with good examples of ERANETs and Article 185, so we have more or less the whole typology, the European Commission and GPCs. And I think the line of vision that we try to look at is not only operational, but it is also political. So we try to put these 2 or 3 vectors with the specifics to research and innovation in place. This is the methodology we followed. So we started by data gathering, and we looked at previous reports. You will see a lot of literature regarding revision on the previous ERANETs that were performed before, and even for the JPIs, we have the Ackerson report and some other publications. So we are not first in providing a view on JPIs. And then we have had a personal interview with each of the JPIs and the P2Ps. We have had interactions through questionnaires that they have revised, and they have acknowledged what we understood, and more or less the information is consolidated. We have thrown 33 country questionnaires that we have received, so it's quite a substantial response that we have got from member states, associated states, and also participating countries in different calls, which is, I think, quite interesting. And we have also performed personal interviews to state secretaries and director generals, so at a very high level, to 11 countries that provide to us also a qualitative aspect. We have interviewed, we have had 6 meetings with Commission directors in the DG Research that have also provided views on what is the value that provides to them the operation of some of the JPIs and the vision for the future. And finally, we have interviewed the GPC chair and management. So I think we have a full picture from top to bottom of the whole exercise. This is the structure of the document. I'm not going through. Soon you are going to have it available. I just mentioned that we have some aspects related to individual GPIs, which is more bottom-up, and some aspects related to the countries. Let me share with you some of the conclusions which I find interesting. So we have been looking at some of the aspects some of the key characteristics of the country participation related to how many JPIs or some quantitative things, the joint calls, what is the alignment policy achieved. And let me remark that this is the response from the countries. So we are based on response from the countries, from the ministries, or sometimes from the agencies. And we can see that it will be a tremendous error if we treat the country attitude towards GPIs in the same way, because we have three separate groups that have little to do ones to the others. And let's see, it's more or less 3/3 with some comments. So we have the leaders, we have 12 countries that participate in most of the JPIs, and they have an active participation. Then we have another smaller group of countries that decide a selective strategy towards some of the topics, but not others. And then we have 18 countries, a majority group that is participating marginally. So we call it the emerging group. This is the way we classified it. So it is by call. You can criticize. We should have more parameters inside, but I think it's sufficient to understand the different nature of the participations. We can see that the long tail of marginal players offers a great opportunity, that this intermediate sector offers opportunities to grow, and we have to see also what is happening to the performance of the leaders. And then let's go into some of the questions that we got answered from the countries. You will see here what they think of the JPI so far. What is their satisfaction level? And we can see that the level A countries are well satisfied. Level 2, the satisfaction is not that high, but it's I think quite interesting to say that there is something like 20% that is very satisfied, and this high satisfaction does not appear in the first group. And then we will see that the impression of the third countries, of this long tail of 18 countries, is not very good. It's not very good. You will see that more than half are unsatisfied. So let's think that when we invite countries to participate in a call, when they marginally play a certain role, in the end we ask, what do you think? And they say, we're not satisfied. So we have to look at this carefully and think that if we want to grow and achieve further impact, we have to devote a particular and a specialized strategy for each of the groups. But I think it's also key to see what is the future participation estimates that the countries have related to this. And when we look at Group A, at the leaders, you can see that they don't plan to grow. So we should look at now how much we consider that this participation should be arriving at. But the truth is, the leading countries, do not plan to grow in terms of commitment, in general terms. This is also the case for Group B, that there is more or less the green color to maintain, and the Group C is the 18 countries. I would call it they are in crisis related to the JPI movement. They are not planning to become more involved. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we have an issue here that we have to consider how to join forces in a better way, because this is what you tell us that you think out of the movement. So maybe if we go just the last step to say what we should be doing, I think there is a major room for improvement, because when we talk about the long tail of the 18 countries, there is the possibility to ally. Just in terms of research, there will be so much benefit to connect to better performing or more advanced systems that can share activities and projects with this last group and help them automatically or more supportively improve through simply sharing objectives. So there is learning benefits, and I think the propeller for that can be the structural funds. which is one of the basic origins of funds for performing research in most of those countries. No? So we dare to put some of the solutions. The second line would be for those countries that are participating in a few calls, benchmarking and showing what some of the better countries in the leading group are doing would be the right way to increase. And finally, when we look at the leading 12 countries, we haven't gone through country by country, but we can say that there are some Nordic countries. We are in Sweden today. Sweden is country number 2, related to the commitment to calls in this case. And we have the Netherlands, we have Norway as examples of high intensity participation. But the general average is that we are talking about less than 1% of the total amount devoted to competitive calls. Of course, this is not the only parameter. We have to talk about what is the structural research that doesn't go through competitive money, etc., etc. So there are very many other ways. But the reality is that the critical mass is not achieved, and we need to have a certain level of connection in relative terms to the country activities. Okay, time is up, so I have to rush. Let me give you how we looked at the methodology of the GPIs. We have provided a spider of 8 factors. These questions are hard questions and are very important because we are talking about how the GPI is positioning the societal challenge in the country, how is leading internationally, how is driving innovation, what is the landscape of instruments, what is the investment in joint research, what is the share of that research, and this spider is the average of the 14. So you will see that you have only 2 points in self-sustainability. This is a major concern. You have share of national investment with 2 points. These are the lowest parameters, and there are other good performing parameters. So I know that you want to look at your own spider in the GPI and see how these people have scored myself. I just want to mention that this is qualitative, so it means that we have gone through an extensive analysis to say if we put a 4 to this GPI, this should be higher than this one, and we have discussed how to rank in relative terms one according to the other. So the group is more or less in peace or satisfied with this analysis that we have done. We are looking at impact, and we are looking at mobilization and alignment as the 2 main basic characteristics to impulse. Just to end, let me say that we have found in key issues a number of aspects. The ambition, we say there is a high ambition in the setting of the goals when we talk about health, food, environment, cities, cultural heritage, etc., etc. The ambition is very high. The commitment related to the ambition is not aligned. So we're required to put the adequate resources to the ambition. Otherwise, the game is not going to work. For alignment, we understand the grouping of the different actors, not only from research. I think this morning has been extensive in that respect. And when we see this alignment, how it responds to the national structures, we mean how does it respond to the ministries and agencies. There is a problem here. We all understand that it's difficult to speak to ministries outside our own ministry, but this is an issue that has to be solved if we want to solve the challenges. We need to put on board the people that have the power to solve, have the power of regulation, and so on. And finally, bureaucracy is an issue that has to be tackled. We have to go through simpler schemas. The stress of year by year sustaining the activity is too high, is too expensive. We have to go into some simpler way. We are considering also policy issues related to each of the stakeholders group, which I don't have the time to cover, I think. No. So just let me finalize with our conclusion, what we would call the conclusion of the 4 comms. And that is commitment, that is community, it means all grouped. We have a com for commission. We think the commission has to play an important role in the game. And the 4th com is a commonality. It means we have to go into more common systems of work. Thank you.
Thank you. And the fifth is counting the minutes. So Juan, Tomás, Hernani, come and join our panel, please. Because we do want to have a few minutes to discuss it before we get to lunch. And let's get our panel on stage. Can we please welcome Fulvio Esposito, the GPC, chair of the GPC High-Level Group on Joint Programming of European Research. Mats Ulfendahl, yes, by all means, some applause. Mats Ulfendahl, Chair of the Management Board of the JPI on Antimicrobial Resistance. Coming in from my right, Evelina Santa-KahleDavid, Deputy Head of Unit at the German Ministry of Education and Research. And she can get some applause too. David Wilson, who remains nothing to do with enterprise cars, but co-chair of the European Research Area Committee. And last but by no means least, Patrick Monfray, Chair of the Joint Programming Initiative on Climate. Right, a lot to cover there. I'm sure everyone is eager to comment, so Juan Esposito, we will start with you.
From me?
You! That's the bit we talked about before.
Yeah. Well, I think I will start with a presentation by Juan Tomás. What mostly worries me is not the graph about the investments of the different member states, but the involvement of the different member states. Because joint programming either is joint, and in my view, joint means inclusive and involving all, or simply doesn't exist. So the problem we have in front of us, I think that the most urgent problem is this one. There are interesting moves. For instance, in the 2016-2017 work program of Horizon 2020, the Joint Programming Initiative Urban Europe will conduct a coordination support action with a specific aim of widening the scope of the Joint Programming Initiative to the so-called new member states, which are always new. I think in 20 years they will still be new. But I think, first, I would have liked more if this was an initiative by the member states, instead was initiative by the Commission, and I am grateful to the Commission for that, and I am blaming the member states for not having thought to this. And I will blame the member states if they do not follow this example, because I think the joint programming as such can be a very powerful instrument for widening, so for involving all the member states. And this would be one of my wishes.
Good. I also want to involve all the panel, and I'm also aware lunch is beckoning, so Mats, over to you.
Yeah, I would to some extent to echo what Fulvio said. I was a bit worried when you described the three groups, from the leaders to the marginal players, because that was based on the commitment in terms of funding. And I don't think funding is everything. It's a sign of commitment, but even with in those countries which don't have the resources to commit large funds, there is commitment to the tasks. And I think the work in the joint programming process, you need to have other ways of participating than just participating in calls. Establishing platforms for exchange of knowledge, I think that's extremely important, and you can participate in that without putting large funds into joint cause, for example. So it goes beyond funding and money. Commitment is extremely important. There I agree fully with Fulvio.
Evelina, I guess you're looking at this from a national level. What can you do to react to that? What can you do to respond?
Well, let me pick up on what was said and emphasize the power we have with the JPIs. As you said, the transnational calls are just one aspect of it. And what we did in the beginning was to really focus on that aspect and looked how much money was invested, how much fresh money even was invested, and then criticizing the JPIs for going towards aeronets and being more or less mere aeronets. So I would like to open that much more and say, okay, there are many instruments by which we can implement the SRA. We have I don't know, joint access to research infrastructures. We can use mobility grants. And if we talk about those players who are not in the game, which are mostly EU13, we have tools like COST, for example, very low-level instruments to access to that networks, even just to participate there. So we should really open up this instrument, this box of instruments we have here.
And let them evolve.
And let them evolve, exactly. This is very important because this pressure of really getting results now is counterproductive, and we need some kind of some time also to evolve there. Okay, coming back to your question, what can we do on national level? Well, I think the structuring and the powerful effect where we can really go into it is when we try when we do national programming, we take over those elements of JPIs which have been agreed upon in the SRA. So in Germany we have given ourselves the national era strategy last year, and one of the elements is there to really create bivalent programs. This sounds very German, I think. So what we mean is when we do national programming, we look at what is done in JPIs in this area and take over elements of it. I think this is a real structuring effect. And alignment, yeah, it was also mentioned. There's a huge bureaucratic effort to do there. Well, why not think we as member states to apply funding rules of the next framework program for transnational cooperation? This would alleviate a lot in that respect. Of course, under the circumstance that they are simplified, because still they are very bureaucratic as well. But however, this could be a step towards that.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there because I'm acutely aware of time, and it is not yet a crime for a German to sound German. David Wilson.
I mean, I think I've got two comments on, I mean, not following on directly from that, but just two observations on having heard the panel and the presentation earlier on. I mean, one is actually thinking about the communications challenge that was talked about in the panel and so on. And I think there's something here which struck me, that it's not always a case of saying to the public or to wider decision makers, don't you understand how important this is? Don't you understand how serious it is? That's part of it for some issues. I think there's another issue which actually probably antimicrobial resistance really illustrates very well, where I suspect there may also be just a general assumption, oh, don't worry, science will sort it out.
Yes, the old necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll just continue to swallow antibiotics because they'll think of something. You know, we've been told there've been disasters before. They'll sort it out. And I think that complacency is probably part of it. Yes, and part of it is actually making sure people understand. Actually, the nature of the risks. I think kind of understanding of risk is really important in all of this. The second kind of brief point, because I had the microphone earlier, so I'll not talk too long, is also we need to be careful we don't. One of the things is even with difficult issues, it's important not to be mesmerized by the difficulty of them. It's important to think, well, what can we do? What can be positive, and how can we get going on this?
Yeah, chip away, if nothing else. Patrick.
Yeah. Here I'm representing not only GPI Climate, but I would say the 10 GPIs chair, because we are sharing common practices, but also we are sharing common issues that we are facing. And by the way, we made a joint statement for this conference, and what we want to pinpoint is further progress that have been achieved for the last 5-6 years, and much beyond to the, I would say, transnational call.
We'll give you a couple of minutes to make the joint statement at the end of this session. So
okay, yeah. I would say that actually the GPI are mobilizing more with trust building than money. Money is at the top of the iceberg of the GPI, but much more important is how the trust building is made inside each member state to attract the different key players, key different ministry, key research performing organization, not only the funders, together to work in a better alignment way with the European landscape. And it's that need times, that need also more political willing at member state level. I think we have made very good progress on the trust building between the different countries. We still have issues with new countries, but we still have to make much more effort inside each country within a multi-layer fragmented national research systems. So, but to do that, we need not only trust building, but we need also political commitment. And it's something that we have to think about how, together with the different member state representative, the Iraq representative, GPC, maybe SFIC, because global coordination is really an important stuff, and GPIs, how together we can jointly back to the initial Lund declaration in 2009 and make commitment adequate with ambition.
Juan, Tomás, it's only fair to, since I cut you off in your prime, that you get a chance to react as well. How do we deal with some of these problems, that the overall level of ambition to support these initiatives has not been all they could be, the levels of operational inertia? We're aware of what the problems are, and we keep talking about them. How do we begin to actually tackle them?
Well, I think you have mentioned operationally we have to go into much simpler system that perhaps is not dependent on the topic for the network in question, because more or less we share how we cooperate and connect, and this should be perhaps we need an effort to homogenize and not to discuss and create structures that are expensive in the long run to operate, and they create stress to finance. So this is I think a fast track to improve. And the second and most important, I think, is we have to see how we sustain a high political commitment in a year after year. So it is not a matter of launching initiatives and then delegating into a low level of civil servant the operation, because we should not blame the JPIs. The JPIs are doing the job. The thing is how they get connected to the people at the states, at the governments that have the power to change the things. And this has to be a sustainable method to convoke them and to revise the advance of what the GPIs are offering. So if we don't have the political layer in place, this is not going to provide impact.
Okay, I know you've all got lots of things to say, and I've got lots of things to ask, but I also don't want to leave the audience out of this. There's a lot of expertise and thoughts here. If this is your chance, speak now or forever hold your peace, because lunch is looming. Thank you. We've got one down there. You know how to flick the switch.
Yeah, I think it works. Robert Jan Smits, European Commission. We heard a lot about commitment, involvement, participation, and it's for a non-native English speaker always very difficult to see the difference between involvement and commitment. And once a person explained it to me the following way: if you want to make a bacon and egg sandwich, the chicken is involved, but the pig is committed. Now,
that's my favorite joke of the day, right?
I would like to see more pigs involved in this exercise. And I think David rightly said it all comes down about creating an appetite and communicating. If indeed senior politicians see, decision makers see in member states that this really makes a difference, they will not only sign up just we want to be involved, but then they see we want to be committed. So I think perhaps much more attention has to be put on showing the concrete results of some of these initiatives. And Fulvio mentioned it, I participated, or a colleague mentioned it, that I participated in the Carnegie Group. And what's quite interesting is that the recognition there from Canada for the antimicrobial resistance joint programming, or from third countries with regard to the oceans, that shows indeed that it's known, that it's well communicated, and that even wakes up then European decision makers, hey, if Canadians, if people from South Africa think this is good, we should perhaps step up the gear. So perhaps more attention should be paid to communication. But do we have enough pigs? That's my question.
And not to build on the joke too much and kill the joke, but how do we make commitment not seem like it might be terminal? Who would like to respond to that? Flavio?
Well,
just briefly, because time
is not easy, and there are a lot of difficulties. We mean, even when there is the goodwill, we have seen recent examples, because there is a keyword, integration, which was mentioned by the Swedish minister, I think, and perhaps also by the commissioner. But integration requires interoperability. And of course, at the basis, there is the willingness. So the commitment, this is my interpretation of the word commitment. It's not just a matter of investment. It's a matter, for instance, of changing internal rules, which prevent Spain integrate with Italy, with France, with Germany. So interoperability is another, and the whole brings to this alignment. I remember, because of age, I remember very well the non-aligned countries movement and its value at that time. But this is also, there is a measure of the progress of the humanity. At that time, we needed non-aligned countries, because to be aligned meant to be aligned with one or with the other. Now we are talking about being aligned among ourselves, not with somebody else. And this, I think, is a very good and important concept. And commitment can be obtained only if the priority is a priority for all and not only for somebody.
Okay, we should maybe say, since we're not so far from the Danish border as well, maybe there's an extension of the metaphor that they learned to breed the pigs to have a couple of extra ribs to give us more bacon. So we need to work on that aspect of that as well. We can take one more from the audience if there is one. We're going to go straight. Okay, two very quick ones. We'll go to that gentleman there first.
Okay, Matthias Andersen from the European Energy Research Alliance. You know, Homer Simpson from The Simpsons once said, if something is really difficult, it is probably not worth trying. Now, I don't think we should go with that, but we've seen consistently that we set very high targets for joint programming initiatives and others to really align large amounts of money. And by the end of the day, we always come out somewhat disappointed that it didn't really happen. And looking at the conclusions from the report, it looks like it might not happen in the near future. Going back to Evelina, I'd then like to ask, would we be better off for the next couple of years just saying, well, let's try to actually align on the discourse strategy level, and then let's keep it there. And you know, we agree on the agenda, we try to implement it on a national level, and then maybe resources are better spent that way.
Evelina, I like the fact we've had Diogenes, Plato, and now Homer quoted. Evelina?
Difficult question. Again, difficult. I would say...
But worth doing.
Worth doing. Well, we should, of course, the investment on the national level is something we have to consider, and I think it's one way to achieve that. What I wanted to say is that there's no one golden way to implement JPIs or to achieve what we are trying to achieve there. So maybe we need to do also one step or another, do our homework on national level, but leave room also for experimental approaches, which the GPIs are already doing. So I wouldn't dare to say that there is one way to do it only.
Okay, very briefly, there was a hand there.
Yes, Ingolf Schiedler, chairman of the JPI Urban Europe. Many thanks for this evaluation report. I think we should take it when it is when we have it on our table. I think we should start a serious discussion about the future of JPIs. I think the slide we saw that the member states in Group A do not want to increase alignment, more or less, at least in budgetary terms. Others are even worse. I think this is something we really have to tackle. This is a challenge. If we want to continue and we want to take alignment in future seriously, we have to come back with a serious political discussion. And I think ERAC and GPC, as my colleague Patrick Monfray already said, I think we should dig into it and rethink what we want to achieve with alignment in Europe in future. And at the very end, we should go back to the political level where we started. It was the competitive council where we started with this whole effort. And I think we must have a political debate in the next time ahead.
Right, given the time, I'm tempted to let that stand alone, but anyone want to make a final comment before I have to break this down for lunch?
Well, I think the two last questions gave a rather negative view of joint program process, and I don't agree. I think joint programming is difficult, but it's definitely one of the best instruments we have to establish this alignment and collaboration in Europe. And alignment, I think it's risky if you define it, which sometimes is implied that you have to do things in the same way, or you even have to do the same things. But alignment is more trying to use resources in a better way and to collaborate. And to do that, we really need to start trusting each other. to realize that what Italy does will be the same way as we could do it in Sweden, and thus we could do it together. So much of trust, and that takes time to build up. And I think the marginal players will finally come into the picture also when they start trusting what we're doing. It's not all about funding, it's trust and building for the future.
Good. Thank you for attempting to end this on a positive note. Could go on, probably will go on over lunch. Sorry we have to squeeze it here, but you need to eat. So can we please again thank our excellent expert panel, Juan, Tomás, Hernani, David Wilson, Evelina Santa-Kahle, Fulvio Esposito, Matt Ulfendahl, Patrick Monfray. Patrick, though, as promised, is going to stay with us because after all that discussion and evaluation, all those JPI witness reports, we're now going to have this joint statement on joint programming initiatives. Now, rather than read through the whole thing, Patrick has kindly agreed just to give us a very short summary. So, Patrick.
Very briefly, I want to say that we have to make something concrete, and it's why the 10 GPI chair are proposing tracks to investigate together with member state representative, GPC, ERAC, Commission DGs, to make concrete action in coming years to improve the alignment and the trust building between the key stakeholders. So we are proposing 11 items to deepen together because we are all in the same boat, because when we go to a societal challenge that cannot be made by some country alone or some organization alone or GPI alone. We are trapped in the same boat, and I think it's about how we share the workload between the different actors, and it's about subsidiarity, but also solidarity and build-up of Europe.
Right, we're all in the same boat. Let's just try and make sure it's not the Titanic. Can we please applaud our joint declaration declarer, Patrick Monfray, and our panel? As another near Danish neighbour said, Hamlet, time is out of joint programming initiatives. When we come back after